We'll call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. The first order of business of the minutes dated, approval of the minutes dated September 21st. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, or addition to those minutes? Being none, all in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, minutes approved. First item on our regular agenda today is a final plat and rezoning. It's to consider a final plat and rezoning from agricultural to general commercial, light industrial, general industrial, and RR for the BK subdivision, lying in the northwest quarter of Section 15, Township 140 North, Range 96 West, and situated easterly of Highway 22. This time I'd ask the party presenting, if they are here, would please come forward and present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Don Schmelling with Continental Real Estate, and I'm here as agent for the Robert and Angeline Cadamus estate. And we are here to request your approval of the final plot and the zoning changes that we discussed and agreed to at our preliminary hearing last month. I'm here to answer any questions, hopefully, that you may have.
Okay, has anyone got any questions or comments for Mr. Schmelling? And I'd ask Mr. Corton if he has a recommendation on this final plat.
I have no problem with the final plat. Just to let the, just an order of procedure, we should make a motion after public testimony and decision for the final plat approval and then go for the rezoning after that.
Okay.
The rezoning is on the second page. The original plat that was submitted shows zoning districts, but those are not representative of what they're actually proposing today. There's been an additional one added to it as part of the rezoning. A property owner that's adjacent to the proposed plat asked if they could be part of this, and I said that would be no problem at all. So make sure on the rezoning side, that's a second page that you have as part of your packet materials. But no, I have no problem with the proposed final plat.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Schmelling? Thank you, Mr. Schmelling.
Welcome.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this, please feel free to come forward. Anyone on the commission wish to make any comments? We'll close the public portion of this hearing then, and we're going to ask for a motion for approval of a final plat.
Before we make that motion, we need to address Mr. Elheiser's concerns of the right-of-way and the paving of that right-of-way. And are we making that part of the motion, Mr. Corton?
That's a policy statement, Mr. Tews. I've talked to the city engineer and myself, and we have notified the applicant that they will be required to pave that. We will be discussing this further at the next workshop meeting, but it's the city's stance that both commercial and industrial properties within our ETZ should be paved, similar to what we have in the city standards. It's just the road alignment and configuration will be different. Instead of having curbs and gutters, it would be a hard surface with a shoulder and with a ditch to be later improved in the future when it's annexed in the city. That's our policy. We'll be finalizing a policy statement on it, and then we're looking at also adding residential properties as well in the ETZ to require that. So that is not a condition that we need to put on the plat. It's just a policy statement that we will be clarifying, but we've notified the applicant of that, so this is not to be unexpected.
Appreciate your comments on that. And at what point, this is for my clarity, I would like to know what point could we attach something to either this plat or rezoning so it would follow through with it and make the city's wishes well known. Mr. Colling, do you have a comment on that?
Mr. President, Commissioners, with respect to the conditions on road surfacing and that sort of thing, our city zoning code provides that road surfacing and road standards have to be done to the city engineer's approval. So the city engineer is the one who is responsible to enforce those sorts of requirements. I think, as Mr. Cortana stated, what he would want to do is address that as a policy matter through the city engineer's office rather than attach that as conditions on plat approval.
Thank you, Mr. Colling.
Mr. Chairman, I could,
Mr. Cortez.
we could attach in the minutes it's the strong recommendation of the Planning Commission that the lots or the streets within this one and the subsequent one that will be preceding it will be paved, and that will also be brought forth to the city engineer. But it's my interpretation and also the policy of the city engineer that, yes, we have allowed gravel in the past. We're looking at this as a holistic approach that eventually these areas and ETZ will be part of the city. It makes sense that the developer should pay for that and not all the residents whenever the property is annexed in the city, in 5 or 10 years when we would have to pave that road. So it makes sense to do that at the start instead of the latter end.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? At this time, I would ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Tooth.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final plot.
There's been a motion to approve. Second, and that's with a short notation of recommendation, follow through with the city's policy on paving. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Final plat approved for recommendation to the city. This time, then, we'll go to the rezoning of that same property. Mr. Schmeling, at this time, being we're doing this two parts, if you have any other further comments on the rezoning, please feel free to.
No, I don't think so, other than that we discussed at the last preliminary hearing that we're going to have general commercial along the corridor, light limited industrial through the middle, and on the far east side of this plot, it'll be general industrial with the rural residential abutting or buffering the Krolichek subdivision.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or any questions for Mr. Schmeling?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
am I understanding right now, are we, with this rezoning, are we trying to include that long lot, or that long parcel that's not part of the plat? Is that right?
That is correct.
So we've advertised, it's outside the plat boundary, but we're covered with advertising?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Does that sound agreeable?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. If there's anyone else in the public who would like to make comment on this, please feel free to come forward. Give us your opinion. Any other comments from the commission? This time we'll close public portion of this hearing. To ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Jack.
I'll move that we approve the rezoning as shown on the revised final plat, and that we include in the rezoning action the unplatted tract, and I think the minutes probably should show that document number, the digits in that document number, so that it's real clear which tract we're rezoning that's not part of the plat.
Is there a second to that motion? Second. Okay. Any discussion? So, would that document number 3051797 be correct?
Isn't it 3066594, or am I looking at the wrong one?
That's what I thought, 306.
Oh, just a second.
3066594.
Okay. I apologize, yeah.
That
That's
is
the
correct.
correct number. Thank you. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommendation for zoning approval. Thank you, Mr. Schmeling. Okay. Second order of business today on the regular agenda is a final plat and rezoning. It's to consider a final plat and rezoning from AG to GI for the industrial park subdivision lying in the northwest quarter of Section 16, Township 140 North, Range 96 West, and situated westerly of Highway 22. This time I'd ask the party presenting this, please come forward. Give us your...
Again, Don Schmeling, Continental Real Estate, representing the Robert and Angeline Catamus Estate, and as agent for them, we'd like to request your approval of the final plot and the rezoning on that to general industrial.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Schmeling? And while we've got you there, Mr. Schmeling, I'll ask Mr. Corton for a recommendation on this.
Staff recommends approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And this one, too, will have the city's recommendation of paving the streets within the boundaries. And you are aware of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this, please feel free to come forward and give us your opinion. Is there anyone else on the commission who would like to give an opinion on this? Comment? Being none, I would ask, we'll close the public portion, I would ask for a motion. And a motion to approve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend to approve. Thank you, Mr. Mellon. Item 3 on our regular agenda today is a preliminary plat and rezoning.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is a rezoning with this as well.
Okay. You want us to do that separately? Okay.
Yes, please.
Mr. Schmeling, if you would, please, do you have any comments on the rezoning?
Just that we'd like it to be general industrial. Other than that, nothing.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to make comment on the rezoning portion of this? Please feel free to come forward. Anyone on the commission who would like to make comment on the rezoning? This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd like a motion on the rezoning. I think, is there a second? A second? And I would assume that without question we'd be attaching a notation about the paving, the surfacing. Can we take that for granted that we'll be doing that?
Yes, sir. I'm going to talk to the city engineer, and we'll get a definitive policy statement that we can have, and it can be distributed to you and the commission, and we'll give that to the applicants as we meet with them and tell them that from this point on, or I've been telling them that for about a month now, that we would require that within our ETZ, or extraterritorial zone. So they're aware of it. They factor that in as part of their development and see if it's feasible for them to develop at this time or not.
Thank you, Mr. Cortana. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend to rezone. Approved. Thank you again, Mr. Schmeling.
One final request, can I ask that this get
Sure.
moved to the city commission November 7th meeting? agenda?
Will that fit their schedule? Yes, it will.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 3 on our regular agenda, it's a preliminary plat and rezoning. It's to consider a preliminary plat and rezoning from AG to R3 for the Cooks Meadow Hills Third Subdivision, lying in the northwest quarter of Section 28, Township 140 North, Range 96 West. At this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please, forward.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Harvey Schneider with Tolman Engineering. With me is Mike Cook, the owner and developer for this project. The plat of Cook Meadow Hills Third, as presented, contains 14.33 acres. Again, the plat is located in the northwest quarter, Section 28, 140 North, Range 86 West. The south boundary of the plat, as presented, would be the north property line or the north boundary line of the Cook Meadow Hills Second Edition, which is also, it'll be the north right-of-way line of 31st Street Northwest and the east boundary line of 10th Avenue West. The plat consists of three blocks and 4 lots. The proposed zoning will be residential for the entire subdivision. For Block 1, which includes the 2 lots, that'll be zoned R3. Block 2, which includes 1 lot, would be zoned R3. And then all of Block 3, which is the 1 large lot, will be zoned R3 also. And then the proposed access points for the subdivision for this phase of the plat will be a combination of the 10th Avenue West and a continuation of the 12th Avenue West, which will connect to 34th Street West in the future on the north side. The proposed infrastructure for the area will be connected to the 12th Avenue West, where the previous water and sewer was terminated on the last project. A request for annexation has been previously submitted to the city for the proposed third edition. And one thing, looking at the plat on the way out here this morning, I saw that we forgot to indicate the non-access line along 10th Avenue, and that will be shown on the final plat when we bring that in next month. So I have indicated that. It was just an oversight on my part. We've also talked with James Kramer with the Parks and Rec, and we have a meeting scheduled with him after this meeting this morning to continue the discussion on the cash in lieu of the land. And for the first, second, and third, it's been our understanding they're going with the cash in lieu of the land. But as we proceed with the master plan, for the remaining portion, we're going to be doing some revisions. They want to take a real close look at it at that time. So we're going to start our discussions this morning with the continuation of the master plan. With that, are there any questions of myself or Mike?
No, the only question I've had is the non-access. Is that pretty well set that you feel that there will be non-access on 10th, on the south end of 10th? Have you ever made any plans for hopefully gaining access there?
Well, I guess looking at what the next, originally on the Cook Meadow Hills second, the layout that Mike had, he was looking at that, his original layout, he wanted access on the 10th, but he made some revised plans there that it could make it work to go the other way, which we did. And with the recommendation of the commission, we put the non-access line there. With the proposed development that is going on that lot 1 of block 3, that large lot, just with their proposed layout and such, the non-access line won't hurt that particular project.
Okay. So that's not a priority for you at all then?
I don't believe so. Okay, no.
Mr. Chairman, I could just add
Yeah,
that
Mr. Borton.
that's a continuation of what we've done on 10th Avenue. It's going to be a future collector, the arterial, and we're trying to limit access off there. It makes sense to have access off the other roads to gain access. So it's just a continuation of what we've done for both the first two phases as part of this development, and also will be a policy that we'll have for the east property as the east property develops as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Schneider, I guess we all know that 10th Avenue West is probably a ways away before that's constructed. So the primary access to this subdivision will be from the south on 12th, correct?
That is correct.
Looking at your drawing here, it appears that that existing road, which is really a private road, is not on your property, is not on Mr. Cook's property.
To the east there?
Yeah.
That is correct, yes. One thing we've been looking at, and there's some discussion on, is that when we requested the annexation for this particular property, we did go all the way to the north to the center line of 34th. What we're looking at is, on the next phase here, and we'll be talking about that, is we're going to be looking at extending 12th all the way to 24th for connection and access at that point. If you project the 12th Avenue directly to the north, we're looking at connecting that.
You're anticipating my concerns.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all know that, especially with the kind of density you're going to have there, that people will try to access 34th somehow.
Right.
And they'll use that existing road unless you provide something else. So I think it's important that we do provide something else.
Right, and that was,
It's temporary even.
yep, and that was one of the reasons for the annexation and everything, to get that in. But I guess we want to further the discussions with Ed and Sean about the, with the master plan and also the development along 34th.
Okay, that's good. The other question I have, again, with this density, and I know you've got R2 and R3 to the south, are you okay with sanitary?
I visited with Sean last, or 2 weeks ago when I was out, and there was no problem with that. Actually, this will be the last, subdivision that'll be running into that sewer line that we've developed.
Okay.
Everything else, I guess besides those 3 lots, if they become commercial or whatever they become in between the Meadow Hills 3rd and the 34th, but all of the other sewage or utilities will be going to the west. We'll have to find a different layout for it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I have a question for you on, how are you sitting actually with Parks and Recs? I know you've engaged in discussions with them, but we're getting into the 3rd phase, and I'd like to be assured that that their needs are being satisfied. Between the zoning commission, planning and zoning, and the city, we've tried to address some of the probably shortfalls that have been served upon Parks and Recs in the past, where they have not probably been given proper remuneration for properties, and that's got nothing to do with your property, but it's just been a policy.
Right.
And that policy's been addressed by the city to up their remuneration and let them get into discussions prior to approvals and make sure that those things are approved to their satisfaction, not that it's just an ongoing discussion, that their needs are satisfied before this gets finalized.
Okay.
If we're talking about Phase 1, Phase 2, and now we're into Phase 3.
Right.
Have their Phase 1 and Phase 2 needs been met from their point of view?
You know, and Mike's committed to work with the Park District and everything, and I think there was some conversation yesterday, and maybe Scott could elude or explain a little more as to what his discussions were with James yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, I gave you all a handout of a letter that was sent to Mr. Cook and Mr. Schneider, and I did meet with James yesterday morning to talk about this, and then he called me late yesterday afternoon to tell me that they had a meeting set up with Mr. Cook. So I think, you know, from that aspect, we should let that take place. But I would say that I have no problem with this preliminary, but I would ask the commission that when we see a final, that the Park District land is met and shown on the plat before any final is approved.
Thank you. I think you should be given that consideration. I think the Park District should be. Mr. Corton, do you have a comment or opinion on that?
Yes, we had, as city, we had spoken to the developer and also Harvey itself and said that we're comfortable with allowing the third phase. With any subsequent development, the entire remaining portion has to come in front of the board in order for the Parks District and also for us as a city commission to evaluate the project holistically instead of piecemealing it, and then you lose the integrity of it if you do a change towards the end. So I feel comfortable with this last phase, with the expectation and the understanding both from the developer that the next phase will be the remaining portion of the acreage, which if you look on their master plan, that would be the entirety of that. So the park, the subject park, will be located somewhere within that. I don't see that the park, based upon the comments that I've heard, will be part of the third phase, or this third edition in front of us. It will be to the southwest of here or directly to the west. That will be probably where the park destination would be. So that will be taken care of on the next phase. And that will be, that will come in as a preliminary plat for the remainder of the whole development, the entirety of all the lot lines, where the streets are going to be, where the stormwater is going to be located, all that, and the park site will all be located on that. So I feel very comfortable with allowing this to proceed forward because I don't see the park location within this particular annex, within this addition. And with the understanding, and the applicant and the developer know that if they propose a fourth edition that is not the entirety of the process, we're going to reject it. They need to come in with the entirety of the remaining land in order for us to evaluate it correctly. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
is that including
Mr.
10th
Peters.
then as well?
including 10th? 10th is not part of their property, it looks like, to the east. I mean, most of 10th right now would be the Corsi property. Corey property, yes. So this would be all of it to the north and also to the west and to the southwest of the property. If you look on your plans, I think there's the master plan, it would include all of that in order for us to holistically evaluate the project.
Even though 10th is not on their property, isn't it important that it's going to be a thoroughfare or water, sewer to loop it? Harvey has done an assessment on there.
Half of the 10th Avenue West right-of-way will be on the Cook property. So half of it will be.
So 50% of the development would be Mr. Cook's. So isn't there something that we could do to put in 10th? It makes sense. Because it's going to be an access easement. You said it yourself. People are going to access that road, which is down a well right now. It just seems reasonable that that road has to go in. If Mr. Cordy gets assessed, he gets assessed.
Right. And that's something I need to discuss with the city engineer, that I could have, you could put that as a condition if you want to, Mr. Tews, and we could evaluate that, but I have not got the direction from the city engineer on that, so I can't comment any further.
It seems like it's a problem.
Understand.
It's looping for sewer, stormwater, water.
Right.
There's a lot that has to happen before 10th Avenue West can go in with water and sewer, but also getting the other half of the right-of-way on the other side. So there wouldn't really be any way to do it yet. It's going to have to be a future thing.
Well, you could my suggestion would be just put a condition that prior to final plat approval, that the city engineer has to evaluate Third Street and to see if improvements need to be necessary for the plat of that. And then he could bring it forth, he could provide his recommendation before you get final plat approval. The issue can be addressed that way on the next stage.
I think, yeah, that 10th, I think that would be, I personally think that would be, my opinion, that is important with this. We're talking about some property being developed right now on 10th. And it is quite a development that to ignore 10th at this point in time wouldn't be proper. I think we believe that that is going to be a highly used roadway at some point, and should be for those properties, all those properties that border 10th. Would be good to see that somewhere there's a push to get 10th developed, that it should be looked at.
Right.
And you, like say, half of that is on your development.
Right, it's a quarter line there, and what we're doing is dedicating, on all of our plats so far, we are dedicating 40 feet, which would be half of the right-of-way. And I guess since the first plat has been done, you know, the city and the city engineer's office has been working on it, and it started down with the Hartle and Leffer property, you know, for access to the existing 10th, and then that'll just have to progress north. But talking with Sean, it's going to take, it isn't something we can get, or that they can get done within a year here. It's going to take a period of time to go through the procedures to get that done.
You agree it should be on the map to be done? It really should be part of the process.
Okay, and I guess we're doing our part with the dedication of our part of the right-of-way, and there's nothing we can do on the other side, but, you know, it's in the planning and it's in the works to be done.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Tooze?
Mr. Chairman, if we let that last phase go in, wouldn't that put the city of Dickinson, what I'm trying to say is, Mr. Cook's already dedicating his land, his easements. We need 25% of the acreage to take the easement on the other side of the 10th for the city of Dickinson. If we let that last phase go in there, there's going to be no possible way of getting 10th without that development coming in on the other side of the road.
Are you talking about the last phase, not this one, but the remaining portion of it? Correct, absolutely.
I don't know what the remaining acreage is, but Mike has done his part.
Right.
And without his cooperation, we wouldn't get these easements. We're going to need his cooperation to get
Correct.
the other 25% of the other side of the road.
Correct. And that would all be part of, the next phase, because we'd have the total for it. And the next phase, if you look on this one, and that's why I want to look at it holistically, includes the portion all the way up to 10th. So we still have that nexus that is tied in there. 10th is not all the way just dedicated, and we haven't addressed the issue. So the next phase would address all of that.
Have you ran the numbers? Is the parkland going to, if he turns around and gives back parkland, is that going to put us at risk of not having that 25%?
I have not, but I don't perceive that as a problem. But that issue could be addressed before we have final plat. So why don't, I think it'd be fair to have a condition that the city engineer reviews 10th Avenue and provides a recommendation prior to final plat. And then that issue could be addressed. I'll have the city engineer here to discuss that in detail so that you feel comfortable before final plat. I think that's a fair way of addressing it.
Thank you, Mr. Corton. Any
Yes,
other comments or questions at this?
I have one for Mr. Tooze. I guess when he was talking about, you're talking about the remaining portion between the proposed 33, or 33rd Street and 34th, about Mike dedicating some more land there to complete that? Is that what you were talking about?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think Mr. Cook would have to dedicate any more land. My whole point is if Mr. Cook puts in his third and possible fourth subdivision,
Okay.
City of Dickinson wouldn't have 25% or more of the land that they could annex in from the Cordy property to get the easement from 34th all the way down to 35th Street. For the whole length of 10th.
Oh, all the way down past Leffers and Hartles? Okay, okay.
Because, I'm assuming, because of the lack of cooperation on Hartles and Leffers, that we're not going to have Mr. Hartle and Mr. Leffer coming in here asking for 10th to be put in.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Colling, do you have an opinion?
We have dealt with that issue with Mr. Leffer and Mr. Hartle and do have a development agreement in place with them for the construction of 10th.
And are the discussions you've heard as far as the percentages and what the city would have as far as right-of-way going north on 10th, if the fourth phase went in, would that make it easier to get 10th put in, being they've dedicated half of their property that's needed for, half of that property that's needed for that right-of-way for 10th?
Annexation for the remaining parcel from 31st Street to 34th Street has already been passed by the City Commission, and that is being published at this time. I believe the hearing for that, for protest, is the 21st of November. So that portion has already been annexed in, or the process for that has already been done. As to the east side of 10th, at some point, that will probably have to be annexed into the city, and the city will have to acquire right-of-way for the east half of that street. I think Mr. Corton and Mr. Soren have been engaged in discussions on that process, but nothing has gone forward at this point as far as acquiring that right-of-way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think that's what we're trying to look at. You've tried to contribute your half.
Right.
We're interested in seeing that 10th be developed.
And so are we.
And the city is trying to do their part on that.
Okay.
Any other questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman, need to back up a little bit. I heard a little bit of a disagreement between Ed and Scott as far as when to approve this park. It seemed like Ed was willing to go and approve this the third. Scott, I think, wanted it in place by then, and I'm kind of in agreement with Scott. Let's have it in place. They have another month before the final plat will come in. I think the park's land issue came up at the public hearing for the master plan study, and I think there's people out there concerned about some of this stuff. So I guess I would like to agree to have this in place before we approve the final plat here for the third. I guess just in addition to that, you know, things happen, and we're all assuming the fourth edition is going to take place, but, you know, that's not here yet, so sounds like you're meeting on it, and I don't know if that'd be an issue. It seems like we could have that in
Right.
place anyway.
I guess I'll agree with Ed's comment is that, you know, just looking at the third and talking with James, they're going to be looking on the westerly side of the property for the park property, or as that drawing that was handed out. I mean, he has an area indicated that he's looking at, which will not be part of, you know, the third edition plat. But, you know, I'm sure, you know, Mike and the city could come up with an agreement and have something drafted in writing to, you know, confirm an area and an acreage of some nature, you know, to the west of here. But I know it's not going to be part of he's not interested in just the way the layout of the third edition is, that he would want it in this edition here. It's going to be further to the west.
Just for our sake, there can be money in lieu of property, or property. Have they talked about the combination, money and property?
I'll let Mike take over from here. I haven't been involved in the money aspect, so.
Commission, Mike Cook, the owner. I don't know if we're having a lack of communication with what's going on here, but we've had extensive conversations with James Kramer, and I don't know where the chain of command is here, but As of yesterday afternoon, we were assured by Mr. Kramer that he was going to talk to Scott about what we have agreed on. And our agreement as of yesterday was for subdivisions 1, 2, and 3, they were going to take the cash in lieu of any property because there was no decent property left in 3 that they would actually want a piece of. And I think they gave you a copy of the letter that we have discussed of where he actually would like to see the park. Harvey yesterday and James had an extensive conversation to continue this with the fire department, some land for them getting involved and tying the park in with the fire department. So we are going to have all these conversations, but I think the lack right now is trying to stop 3 because of an agreement that we already have in place. I guess I just don't understand why one side is saying we've got it covered and the other side is saying we don't have it covered when we were assured yesterday that that would be taken care of. We do have a meeting this morning. We are going to work with them. We would like to see a park in there. We would like to see it tied in with some of the other city facilities, but to try and stop this thing for that just doesn't make any sense, and I'm kind of confused with it.
Well, I'm asking for clarity for the commission's sake here. I would like to be very clear and defined on this, that it does satisfy the Park District. I would like to see something saying, yes.
Well, do we need to have Mr. Kramer come and write the letter or come himself? I'm sure he would do that, yeah. I thought this was all handled, and I guess if we would have needed him to come here himself, I'm sure he would have done this. So we're just coming with the anticipation. As of yesterday, we were fine, everything was taken care of. This was not even to be an issue at the commission meeting here today. So I don't know what more we can do. We are meeting with James after this, so if he needs to make a verbal contract or contact with you, we'll sure have him do that because that's what we've agreed on. I don't know what more to do.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Tews?
I think Mr. Kramer's letter's pretty simple. It says the first and second phase, he is taking cash in lieu of land. It's questionable on the third. So this is a preliminary plot. You have a month to make an agreement with the Parks and Rec in phase 3.
That agreement was made yesterday. He wants cash.
Okay. That's not clearly stated in this letter, Mike. That's the only
Well,
problem.
I guess our understanding was he was going to talk to Scott about this. That's what we were told.
So that's, it. His letter says 1 and 2. So today, resolve phase 3.
Okay,
And then it's done.
we'll talk to James and have him cover that with the letter, but again, we were told he was talking to Scott about it, and that was what was to be relayed at this commission meeting. That's what we were told.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Cortana.
You know, what is said, I was not a part of and the rest, but it sounds like the issue is just a timing issue. If, you know, what you said is that's the case, we could easily put a condition in order to satisfy the commissioner on there that prior to final approval, need an acceptance letter from the Parks Department stating the third edition can be a payment in lieu. And that would give you a month to get it in. It would just be one of the conditions, and you would proceed with final plat approval, and you just have that. So that would easily resolve the issue.
Would that be enough clarity?
That's agreeable, yes.
Okay, Mr. Kovash, do you think that sounds very agreeable?
It does, it does. I think the confusion is coming in the third edition. I don't ever recall us voting to take cash in lieu of in the third. It was first and second. And somewhere this third edition came about, cash in lieu, and I think we need to let the meeting take place. I'm comfortable with James meeting with you guys. He knows exactly where we stand. This is probably a long time coming, so I think let's let that happen. And I think a letter, you know, indicating your cooperation or wherever you decide to put it, it would be adequate. But we need to have something, because personally, we've been dealing with this, it seems like forever. And we need to have a location picked out. you know, we assume there's a fourth and whatever many additions, but we don't know that. I mean, there's no guarantee of that. We want to make sure that our land is chosen and we know where it's going to go.
Well, I think we've tried to work, well, we have worked with you pretty closely, and I don't think anybody wants to really make a rash decision here. We're willing to give that land however it goes about. And again, I think, I don't know if you're going to be at this meeting, maybe you should. Harvey had some really good conversations with Mr. Kramer about some different concepts of tying the couple of things we talked about together, which has been very successful in other communities, and it was something, again, that highly interested James. So even coming in on our next phase and saying we want to pin it, I guess we want to try to give you, in the long run, the best location that we can give you where everybody's happy, instead of saying, gee, we got to hurry up and get the fourth through, but we need to put the park over here, and it's not really where you want to be at any given time. So we are willing, and we'll put that in writing, that we're going to work with you guys, and we're going to get you what you want, but let's not be hasty about it and jump into something that isn't going to work for anybody. Let's try to find that right location. The fire thing came up just the other day, so I mean, we've got things that are starting to tie things together, and again, I think we want to find the best location for you. We're not trying to elude it or get out of it in any means, and again, we'll put that in writing. So let's just keep an open mind, and we'll keep the dialogue going and see what we can find.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I think that will, if that takes place, that will bring clarity to this issue prior to a final. Is there any other comments or discussions? Mr. Schneider, did you have anything else to add? No, I'm finished. Okay. This time I'd ask if there's anyone else in the public who would like to make comment on this preliminary plat and rezoning. Anyone on the commission at this time would like to make further comment?
You ready for a motion?
I'll close public portion, and this time are we going to do two motions again? Okay, we're going to do a motion for a preliminary plat approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the preliminary plat with two contingencies. One, that the park issue is satisfied between now and final plat, and number two, that the questions concerning 10th Avenue West are satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second? I'll second. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. At this time, if there's anyone else who would like to make comment on the rezoning, we'll ask for further comment. Mr. Schneider, would you like to make any comments on the rezoning part then? No. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the commission? We'll take no further comment on that. At this time, I'd ask for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning request in Cook subdivision.
Is there a second? The motion is second. Any further discussion? No further discussion, but I would like to commend them in this with this motion for their work on this development, and I think it's a very nice development, and I especially like their work on aiding the city and getting 10th put through. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. This time we have a rezoning request, item 4 on the regular agenda. We have a rezoning request to consider a rezoning request from R1 and LC to R2, R3, and CC for the State 7th subdivision and State 8th subdivision. The property is generally situated east of the business loop and southerly of Fairway Street. There's two enclosures, 6 and 7. At this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward. give us your comments.
Mr. Chairman, before Shane addresses the board, I provided for you, because in our agenda, we're trying to shorten the agenda, so if we have a plat and a rezone, we're just putting that as an agenda item. We need to have 2 motions. We did the same thing for states, and I provided for you the map that breaks it up between 7th edition and 8th edition. So we will have 2 motions on the rezone. It'll be a 7th first and then 8th. I wanted to clarify that before we move forward, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Croton.
Good morning, I'm Shane Rohrs, representing Rohrs Development. As you stated, we're looking at a rezone of state 7th and 8th. You guys already covered the location. It was our intention to be part of the original plat, but it was an oversight. So I think that's about all I have on it.
At what point in time did you decide you wanted to do this? Because, you know, there was a street put in,
Yeah, again,
berm put in the middle of the street, lights.
this was part of the original plat, or intended to be part of the original plat, but the actual rezone was an oversight on these two additions, and the streets are not put in these additions yet. The streets are put in 5th and 6th, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
So that you would like, actually, we're going to do it in two parts, but the properties are connected. You're going to want to put a commercial basically between 9th and 8th.
No, the commercial will be north of 8th, in 9th, I believe. 8th is residential, and 9th is commercial. Or am I-
We call it fairway sometimes. It
Yep.
it waffles a little bit through the city.
Mr. Chairman, I could clarify if you like.
Yeah,
You know, the two different
that'd be
ones.
great for, I think for,
Okay. If you refer to the color map that I provided for you this morning, the thick black line is separating 7th edition and also 8th edition estate. If you recall, last month, I believe, they came through for final plats for both of those. As Shane had mentioned, there was a disconnect in which they had intended to do the rezone with the final plat. It's just that it was not, an application was not filled out that way, so it was not brought forth that way. So they had to come back. So that's what they're doing. The final plats have been approved by City Commission. So the first item is state 7th edition, and that's the one that's to the south of the thick black line that I provided for you. The R2 is the lavender color, and the R2 in the R3 is the blue that is located or abutting the business loop. So that's the first item that we have. The second item would be to the north of that, in which you would have lavender to the south side of A Street, which would be R2, and then across A Street, you have the kind of orange color, and that's our community commercial zone. And that would be the subsequent rezone. I hope that clarified that. I'm trying to put things together to make it so our agenda doesn't look like it's such a long agenda, trying to combine it, but maybe it's more confusing, so maybe we'll separate them out if that's what the commission wishes.
no, I think this just fine, especially it's the same party presenting. I think it has worked out well, but I would hope this would stimulate some discussion, being it was left out originally, and yet the intent was there. That seems to me like it's a pretty good chunk of development.
Mr. Chairman, from a staff's perspective, I'm in favor of that. You know, this is consistent with what Rohrs have done to the south, following along with, you know, following along to the east, single family, then you have the transition to R2, On this one here, the R1 is not there, that's to the south. Then you have R2 and R3. So this is a continuation of what they're doing, except the southern portion along Fairway, which is a commercial area. So this would be very indicative of a consistency from Fourth all the way up along the side, in which the commission and as city, we feel comfortable with it. They've done very well in their development. So I'm very much in favor of what they're doing. It was just an oversight on their behalf, and I'm in favor of their overall development scheme.
And the city is comfortable with the access then on Fairway to the commercial?
We've talked to them that,
because
yes.
we've addressed that before, that it could be done.
Correct. What we would do is the lots that are further to the east on Fairway, since they're smaller lots, we may require joint access between those two lots in order for Fairway to have limited access off it, but the ones that are the westerly portion are bigger lots, and each of those can have access points. That makes sense, but we would not allow access off of the business loop. And we've already talked to Shane, and he's aware of that issue.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Tooze?
I don't know the other board members' feelings, but on 7th, the first few lots coming off of 7th Street and 8th Street, I'm wondering if Mr. Rohrs would be in favor of making the first couple, 3 lots in each 7th and 8th edition R1 to transition. Since there's homes already on the end of 7th that are pretty substantial homes, would you be in favor of transitioning from an R1 to an R2 property with the first few lots?
You know, unfortunately, I'm a little less involved in this. I'm probably a little uninformed on what we'd like to do there. Obviously, this was our intent. I guess if that was a requirement, that might be a requirement, but I think the intent was to do them all R2.
Mr. Chairman, my
Mr.
feeling
Tooze.
is that there's some pretty substantial homes that are on Lot 8 in Block 3 of States Edition. The transition on 7th Street and 8th Street aren't there. But going over the hill from 7th Street, there is substantial homes there. I mean, there's some $500,000-$600,000 homes there. And transitioning from those homes to an R2. Anybody else have concerns of that?
Mr. Chairman,
I think that's a concern. Mr. Jackson?
I know on your other R2 properties, you've done twin homes. Is that the plan here? Twin homes?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think paying attention to transition is important, but I think across 23rd like this, I'm not sure I see that as an issue.
Right.
The developer has shown us his intent for, I think, a year on the land use on this thing. We've known this for a long time, even though the formal request is just today. I guess I wouldn't be too concerned with twin homes across 23rd.
And your twin homes are nice, Shane. I mean, I live in that neighborhood. They're really nice. If nobody else has that concern, at least it was discussed.
I think it would be desirable that those twin homes access 7th and 8th rather than 23rd. That's a detail, but I suspect that's the plan anyway.
Yes, very much so.
Any other comments, questions on that? I'm sure the people with the single-family homes there would like to see something desirable next to them. It would be nice to see exactly what would go in there. And I'm sure that the formula for R2, for all of those, you have to have so much property for what you want to do. And if the ends are requested to do a different style home may affect that, but still, the transition should be there some way.
And I can certainly share that with the developer. Obviously, as they sell these lots, they're, requiring to review the plans prior to letting somebody start construction and the covenants and all that stuff, so I can share that with them.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if there's any concern on the north side of 8th Street from 23rd to, say, States Boulevard there, as far as having commercial across from R2. 8th Street, I'm assuming that's probably all R1 for the most part coming in there. And just, I guess, as we're talking about things, like to throw that out there as maybe an R3 or something different for that portion of the north side of 8th Street there for a stretch. South side. North of 8th Street, the north half, but the
Mr.
south
Chairman.
half of that block.
Yes, Mr. Jackson?
This situation would be similar, they're asking for community commercial, which would be similar to the Frederick Strip Mall over on State, where you back right onto R1, and I think that turned out pretty nice, really. I think that in the future, we're going to see a lot of community commercial up against all types of residential, and done right, I think that's what we want. It's the harder commercial that can be an issue for us.
I think you're correct there. I know I personally like some of the older communities where you can walk, you have a little general store across the street, you might have a nice little local pub on the corner. We allowed to have a nice pub built right across from public school. I don't have an issue with it either.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with Jerry's opinion there, is to start off there. I don't disagree with Mr. Jackson of having the whole block of Lot 2 and Block 1 and that area being CC. It just depends how they split that block. Done right, yes. After we zone it, not saying anything, Shane, that you guys wouldn't do it right, but after we zone it that way, I wouldn't be in favor of making Block 1 and all the way down to Badlands, that entire block CC, with having straight across. If the approach is from 8th, I would disagree with it. If all the access is from Fairway, I would definitely agree with it, because then it would be consistent of how States was done. But if you enter the businesses from 8th on a residential side, I would have concerns with that.
Mr. Chairman, I could address that issue.
Mr. Corton?
Our current code has it so that if you have access off of a commercially zoned road in a residential, you need to go off the commercially zoned road. So our current code would prohibit them coming off of 8th Street. So, they could have, that could be an emergency issue or something if there's needed for fire in which you have a breakaway or something like that. But other than that, the access needs to be for the commercial off of fairways. So,
Then I would concur with that.
and that's what we'd be looking at. And we've notified, I've let Larry Nygaard know, and Shane and the rest, that you're going to have access off of fairway. And as a development plan, that only makes sense. If you're going to have commercial, Fairway is your commercial, is a collector right now, will be a main collector that we'll have as part of the city, so it only makes sense to have it that way.
Mr. Rose, do you plan on, you're asking for a rezoning, and once it's rezoned, whatever zone 2 can be done on that property. Are you going to sell this property or manage it?
I would say the residential portion will be sold, the R2s. The R3s will probably be retained and managed. And the community commercial, I believe, will be sold possibly sold and managed though.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Shane, I see you're writing some notes there. Does that sound agreeable to be coming off a fairway for commercial?
Yeah, and again, I'm only half in the know on this, and I apologize. I know Ed's been working with Larry, and if that's the requirement they've talked about, that's what I wrote, is to make sure that he's aware of that.
Thanks, Ed. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Rohr.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this rezoning request, please feel free to come forward. Anyone on the commission wish to make any further comments? This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and we are looking for two motions on these two different pieces of property. I would ask for a motion. The first would be the along States and 7th. That is what we'll do first. There a motion?
We'll see if I can mess this up, but
And if you need help, Mr. Croton probably can make sure the right words are put in the minutes on this.
I would make a motion to approve the layout as Mr. Corton has illustrated it for Rohr's 7th edition, or State 7th, excuse me.
Thank you. Is there a second? Been a second. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend to approve. At this time, we have a motion to take care of this second part of this property. Is there a motion?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to approve State's 8th subdivision as illustrated by Mr. Corton's drawing, with just one caveat of assuring that all accesses are from Fairway, not 8th.
Thank you. Is there a second? Been a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Rohrs. This time we have a rezoning request. It's to consider a rezoning request from LI to RI for the property described as Lot 1, Block 1, Prowse First Subdivision. It's 1474 South Main, enclosure number 8, item 5 on our regular agenda. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Dale Johnson. I purchased these properties back in March of this year, and I'm just trying to get some legality as far as if I can rezone one of the lots here and put a home on it, and I'm just looking for your answers, I guess, basically, to see if I can proceed and follow forward with this request.
Dale, is that correct? The lot to the north of you is R1 already?
Right, it's next door, it's a residential home.
And the find unknown lot to the south of you is zoned?
Is zoned light industrial, which I own also.
You own also?
Right. I just want to put a home next to the residential to the north there.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I could add some comments. I
Corton.
had spoken to Mr. Johnson about this, and he, originally, he was looking at the property, and I notified him that it was light industrial. He wanted to have the ability to be able to live next to where he works. And this is one of those rare occurrences that this could work, in which you have residential to the north, in which he would like to downzone, which is a rarity nowadays, to actually downzone, go from light industrial to residential, in order for him to use that the proposed lot and, to put a house there, to use the existing metal building, the one that's depicted as R1, as his personal use, and then be able to walk 100 feet to be able to go to his office in the L1 where where he'll have his business. So this is one of the few occasions that the work and walk actually works well. So as staff, I recommend approval, contingent upon obviously the city planning commission making a recommendation for approval.
Does our code for outbuildings going to R1 meet the requirements that exist there now?
It's in the existing building, so converting it for residential use would be fine. It's just you have to have the residential zoning to be able to do that.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
I want to make sure I understand.
Okay.
You're not building a new house, you're going to convert that existing building to a
No,
home?
there's no home behind it right now at all. So it would be a manufactured home or build house behind this.
So it's going to be a different structure, it's not the structure that's there?
I could clarify that. The structure's there, he'll use for his person, he's going to use that for storage, but he's going to build a residence.
Okay, what I'm
In
wondering,
R1 zone.
is there any chance that in rezoning this to R1, are we going to bring him into some non-compliance thing with that existing building?
The existing building's non-compliant. I'm looking at, I don't know the definitive the dimensions on it. Our current code would say an outbuilding's 1,200 square feet. It's an existing one. It's kind of, yes, that would be the case. Nevertheless, it would allow the applicant the ability to have, to be able to walk to work, and it would provide additional buffering for the residents to the north. So that's what, I was factoring that in consideration.
I have no problem with the idea. I mean, it's such a mixed use in that area now, but I'm just wondering if we should rezone only maybe the west half of the lot or something, so he doesn't have a problem in the future.
You could do that. You can do a portion of that. That'd be fine. Now, the only question would be, if we rezoned only a portion, you'd still be able to configure in the existing lot size for the calculation for it. So yes, you could do a portion of it. It's just a little more difficult to represent on a map. That's the only difference would be the two. And we would have to have a legal description of how far from the west that you would want to go to up to that building. So we'd have to have a survey to get that measurement.
Well, if you're telling us it's not a problem to do the whole lot R1, let's do that, but I just don't want to inadvertently create a problem for him.
Well, as I've spoken to him, that building, if it's above 1,200 square feet, it's a metal building, and for some reason there was a fire and the building was destroyed, then he would have to reduce the size of the building and replace that. That's really about the only difficulty that I foresee on this.
Mr. Colling, do you agree with that?
Chairman, I do agree with that. I believe rezoning this to an R1 would create a non-conforming use for that building. It would be able to be used in its current condition, but as Mr. Corton stated, if it ever falls out of use for that or is destroyed for some reason, it would not be able to be rebuilt at the same size that it currently is. It would have to come into a conforming use size.
Thank you. You realize that, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I guess it basically, I'm under that understanding
So
that.
you realize that going to R1, that the restrictions on outbuildings and the number of them on an R1 property are limited?
Right.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments?
Mr. Johnson,
Yes,
it was my property,
you'd keep it.
I would follow.
Well, I was gonna, after he had mentioned that, I didn't know it was possible. That's why I came here to get these questions answered.
That's a good recommendation,
And-
because if a tornado ever comes
Right.
and damages that building,
Right,
you would have to go down and you would
Right.
not be able to use that again.
Yep.
Under Mr. Jackson's suggestion.
Yep.
You could fix it,
Yep.
repair it, do it.
I guess I'd have to say I'd agree with what he brought up, and that's why I'm here, to get all the legal answers answered. I don't want to proceed and do something that, is going to be
So
hindsight.
if you're not under any time constraints
No,
with
I'm
this,
not
and you
under
said you were
anything.
exploring what could be done,
Yep,
and you have an idea of what part of the property you would like to be R1,
Yep.
that possibility is there?
yep,
And
Yeah,
I think,
that's- Basically, I'm here just to get my questions answered to the best of my ability and do what I can. And I'm under no time restraint that I have to do this or anything like that, so. I'd like to proceed and go through with what Mr. Jackson kind of recommended and meet with Ed, I guess, and kind of go over that stuff and
We get, Mr. Chairman, we got two ways to proceed with this. Since this was advertised for the entire lot, it could be reduced. You could always reduce, you cannot increase as part of a public hearing. So as a commission, and, you know, if you'd like, as the applicant, they could take a month and consider it. We can continue it, we could discuss it, you could decide which way you want to proceed. Or if you want to proceed with the recommendation of Mr. Jackson, I feel comfortable that you can make a recommendation today, just describing from the western portion up to the point of where the building's at, and then prior to submittal to the city commission, those definitive lines would be determined. So I guess it's up to the applicant, whichever way you want to proceed. If you want to proceed with that, you can. I feel comfortable with it. Or if you want to continue it for a month to think about it, and we could bring it next month.
no, I'd like to proceed with what was suggested by Mr. Jackson, I guess, and approach it
Okay.
that way. I think that would probably work out for everybody and
Thank
be in the
you.
best interest for me.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Johnson?
No, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jackson?
one other thing, I think I heard you say something about a manufactured home. Can you do a
Well-
manufactured home on R1?
R1 you can.
Okay.
I guess I'm just looking at any option. I don't know what, like I said, legally can be put in. That's why I came here to find out what can be done and what couldn't be done. And I'd rather do, like I said, a stick-built house or something like that. So, you know, that's my impression anyway, is what I'd like to do. But however, the zoning, whatever is available at the time or how I can do it, I'd like to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Creighton?
I think we'd need some kind of buffer from the side of that building or from the west side of the building, as far as where we're looking at splitting that, so just for future. I'm not sure what we'd want, 10 or 15 feet maybe, or something in that range. And then just for my clarification, everything north of there is R1, correct?
I believe it is. I mean, I know the one right north of it is. The one adjacent to it is R1.
R1 further up, I just want to...
I think that would be good if, if we proceed that way, where there be contingency for final, to the city, that you define which part of the property, and the buffering, the distance between those two pieces of property, then, which you'll have for, you know, to take care of future and meet what would be zoning requirements right now, if there was nothing on the property, and we had an R1 and an LI right next to each other, that should be included in there.
Okay.
I believe that's what Mr. Krieg is
Okay.
looking at.
Yeah, however, I mean,
Okay.
I'm willing to look at all those options and agree to those.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, I could propose that if that's a direction the commission wants to go, that the commission accept a rezoning from LI to R1 from the western portion up to 10 feet, up to 10 feet in front, up to 10 feet from the western portion of the building. 10 feet would provide a sufficient buffer for fire, and then also a separation of that. That makes sense to me per our zoning code. So based upon that, you could just provide a recommendation per staff's recommendation of how you should do that. We'll get a definitive description before going to city commission.
What is the actual dimensions of that property?
I don't have that in front of me, to be
Okay,
honest with you.
I guess, okay. 1,000 feet. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this rezoning request, please feel free to come forward. If being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing. At this time, I'd ask for a motion. Mr. Jackson, would you like to make a motion?
I'll move that we grant a rezoning request to R1. Oh, what's the lot number?
We have
Lot 1 of the Prouse addition, from a point 10 feet west of the existing building to the west.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval with the contingencies. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. This time we have a rezoning request. Item 6 on our regular agenda. To consider a rezoning request by Stallion Rockies to rezone from AG to GI for the property generally described as the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 16, Township 140 North, Range 96 West. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mike Mouse speaking on behalf of Stallion Rockies Ltd. With me is Steve Day, their operations manager. This is a bit of an unusual situation. They have a business in the east half northwest quarter of 16, 140, 96, which most of you will know is right west of Solarby. The road, east-west road, they're on the south side of the road. They asked me to work with them on rezoning it, and this originally was in the county zoning territory, and we found out it hasn't been rezoned at all, even though they're being taxed on 15 acres as general industrial. I believe the county records would show it's all still zoned agricultural. Mr. Corton may disagree with that, but that's all we could find, even though they're using about a third of that acreage and have been for years in an industrial capacity. So we're asking that the entire 80 acres, and I think you probably got this map, it shows the buildings in the area to the south of that, be rezoned as industrial, either for their broadening their current business operations or for selling that property. Most of you know the Stallion is in the trucking business. They haul heavy equipment in the oil field industry. They have numerous trucks that are there every evening and go out during the day. And of course, they exit onto Highway 22. But I believe the current use of that property is still agricultural, so we're asking the entire 80 acres be rezoned general industrial. We believe that fits with the philosophy this board has expressed of keeping the industrial off, some distance off of Highway 22. And frankly, it's not very visible at all from 22. There's only certain points where you can even see Stallion's operation from Highway 22. If part of that is eventually sold, then of course that person's going to have to survey that portion and introduce a plat before that could be sold. But for right now, the plan is to rezone all of that 80 acres as general industrial. Now, looking at your item 2 on your agenda today, you rezoned as general industrial. Your agenda says the northwest quarter of 16, and I'm thinking that might be a misstatement because Stallion, owns the east half of that northwest quarter. I'm assuming that must have been the rezoning of that 80 immediately to the east of us, which would be in the west half of the northeast quarter. So that 80 immediately to the east of us this morning, then you've rezoned as general industrial.
Get that clarified. But at this, what are the intent of using the whole piece of property you're asking for?
Well, initially it would just
rezoning?
be to expand their operations because they're getting more and more trucks, but eventually the plan would be to sell off a portion of that 80 acres.
So there's a development portion of this, or a real estate portion of this. What portion, do they have any idea what portion they really want to use?
Well,
general industrial?
if you look at the picture, you can see that this is part of the anomaly. They're being taxed on 15 acres, but clearly their buildings in use take up approximately a third of that, 80 acres. So I would guess that approximately 30 acres is what they would reserve, and 50 acres is which eventually would be put up for sale.
So the current use of the property right now is what?
The current use is, the northern one-third is industrial, the southern two-thirds is still agricultural, used for hay, and they've been very cautious about not going into that area because they thought they were zoned industrial for their use, but not south of their use.
Now, are there any people living there, or are these all?
There's no people living in this 80 acres. There is this residence, which is in the west half of the northeast quarter, which I understand is being sold, but that's the only residence in that area. And that's just been rezoned general industrial because she sold that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
a couple things. Just to clarify, this is immediately west and adjacent to the subdivision that we just approved this morning, and we rezoned to industrial, correct?
Yes.
So, just so everybody understands this is adjacent to what we just approved. So the industrial zoning probably makes a lot of sense. To me, it does, at least. The second question is, I know that, year and a half ago, Stallion applied for a conditional use permit, I believe, with the county for a man camp. Did that not ever happen?
We could not get anybody to commit to a contract to put up this man camp,
Okay.
and it's not Stallion's interest to become motel management, so we weren't going to run a man camp without some other company making a commitment to take over.
Okay, and regardless, it appears that conditional use permit was only for a year, so it's expired anyway.
Correct.
You're aware of that?
Yes, correct.
So if there was any plan for that, you'd have to come back to the city for a...
Right, and right now, there is no plan for that.
Okay. I don't think I see a problem with this.
Mr. Chairman, it almost seems like a cleanup item to some regards, so.
Well, yeah, the only thing I have with it is, I mean, the whole thing is there any point to rezone any more than actually is going to be used? I just as soon as the property stay as ag, as long as possible. If they could define we're going to use 40 acres, fine. But if they're going to say, no, let's rezone it and we'll sell the rest off as GI to some other developer, I guess that's probably fine too, because, you know, we got the industrial out there.
And
But,
if permitted, and if not sold, they would still allow the farmer who's currently haying that to hay it. I mean, that's the use they would make until it's sold or used.
Yeah. And if they're only going to use so much of it for themselves, I believe that the future intent to come in here for, like, okay, we're going to put a man camp in here now, or we'll request one at some point or whatever, that we should, you know, be right up front about it, or whatever the intended use is for the property they don't intend to use.
Yeah, and that's not currently their intent, the man camp thing.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Krieg? So
I'll second.
that is that is it. There's no further comment or question. Anyone from the public wish to make comment on this rezoning request, you can feel free to come forward. If being none, we'll close the public portion, and I will take that as a motion to approve. There's been a second. And is there further discussion?
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that the minutes show that there is no man camp there now, and that at this time, there's no intention to have a man camp there. So there's no confusion that we're somehow approving a man camp in this location.
I think that clarity should be there, too. I too, believe that, that we're recommending that with the realization that the party asking for the rezoning realized that the county did not want a man camp there, and the county has talked to us about that. They don't want people living on the property that aren't supposed to be there, not camping out there. And so we're no way are moving in that direction. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried. Rezoning request recommended approval. This time we have an item on our agenda, it's code enforcement report. And Mr. Cortana?
Yes, for information purposes, I've provided for you the code enforcement report. You'll notice if you have whenever you have a chance that there's significant activity in September. Just going down the lines, you can see a commercial and multifamily, the building permits, assessed values have significantly increased, and just indicative of our development activity. So with that, I can answer any specific questions. Otherwise, that concludes.
Thank you, Mr. Cortan. I would like to mention that if anyone here is not aware of it, the Roundup to the Future kickoff has taken place, and your input is desired. The Zoning Commission has a big part of this. It's for the comprehensive planning and zoning and use for property and roads in the greater Dickinson area. Please get your comments in. Give them to Mr. Cortan, anyone on the committee, anyone on that PAC committee there. It would be great to get a hold of. There is a meeting tomorrow. Is that correct?
That's a surprise to me.
Well, maybe, was there an all-day?
The all-day is November 17th.
Okay,
It's an
November 7th, okay.
Yep.
November 17th, there'll be an all-day, but we'll try to keep everybody in touch, and the feedback is going to be important. And your feedback and your response to it is going to be important.
Mr. Chairman, I could add to that. I think we've had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 members of the Planning Commission there, and that was great, to hear the initial kickoff meeting. There is a survey at dickinsonplan.com. Please do fill that survey out. That will help out as part of the initial visioning process, and encourage others to do so as well. Our next meeting for our comprehensive plan is November 17th. The location will probably be here, I would anticipate, or a bigger venue. We had it at the West River Community Center. We had a very good turnout, probably about 80 people in that room. If we had any more, we wouldn't have probably had enough room. So I'm not sure if that venue will work the best. We'll have to find a bigger one, because I would hope that the next event would be attended by the community and stakeholders. Maybe we'll get 200 or more throughout the morning sessions for that. So we need to have a bigger venue. I don't know if this room would be the best. We may have to look at another one for that, but I'll be updating you with that. Also, before the meeting, I attached 2 zoning amendments. One was specifically addressing the gravel, the dirt parking that we have, and I provided that for you. I forgot that the top portion of the last portion of the paragraph was in red, so it's a little bit lighter. That's the change. Just to clarify it, after the first sentence, you'll see existing structures, and then from there, the font size becomes lighter. That is my proposed language to address the gravel and dirt parking, in which if you increase the building footprint for commercial and industrial land use is greater than 50%, then the entire parking lot and driveway apron needs to be paved. Or if you increase the required number of parking stalls for that greater than 50%, then the same would happen as well. The second one is the one that we had discussed in depth at our last Planning Commission meeting, the Corridor Overlay District. I have proposed one for you. I would like to discuss both of these items at our next workshop, which would be the first Wednesday of November. I'm not sure what that day would be. So please read through that, write your questions and comments or revisions to that, and we could discuss it further. I will advertise both of them for the next Planning Commission for adoption, at least to get public testimony on it. That doesn't mean that you have to recommend it, but at least we started that process. But I'd like to discuss it more in detail at the workshop as well.
Thank you, Mr. Corton. So the workshop will be on the 9th. The next Dickinson Roadmap to the Future meeting will be an all-day event on November 17th. And that,
The workshop will be in the second, Mr. Chairman.
the workshop will be on the 2nd of November, okay? 2nd of November, I'm sorry, first Wednesday. First Wednesday of November, which will be November 2nd, a workshop, that'll be here. The kickoff, the Dickinson Roadmap to the Future meeting will be an all-day one on the 17th of November. Is that right, Karen? 17th of November, and that's an all-day one. And they'll be announced in the paper, and it'll be well advertised. And we hope that there'll be a lot of public participation on that one. Anyone else have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
one thing, when we do these rezoning things, it sometimes concerns me. I think it's got to be hard for Karen to keep up with us with minutes at times. And when we have a subdivision that's got mixed zoning, you know, it seems that we should almost be naming lot and block in our motions and getting those in the minutes. I don't know if Karen tries to do that, but one way we could do it is if Ed and Karen could draft a motion ahead of time and put it right with that application, and then we can add contingencies if we need to, like we do sometimes, but at least that motion would be there with the lot and block numbers and what rezoning they're supposed to be. So we're sure we've got a good record in perpetuity. What the rest of you think, but
I think that's good, and for our clarity, and so the description goes with the motion to the record.
Yes.
We did have,
I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman. That's ultimately where I'd like to go to. If you reference the last board meeting, last commission meeting on the crew camp, provided a staff report on that one, and then I also had recommended motions. I could do that as time permits. I want to get to a point in which everything is evaluated. We have staff reports for that. That's why I'm hoping with the potential regional planner that part-time, that will give me the time to be able to provide you more analysis to help you with better decision-making. That will be one of my priorities to do so.
We need that position.
yeah,
That position for you badly.
that's debatable, but
I don't think it's.
Karen, do you have any questions on clarity? Do you come at some point in time saying, what was this? Or has things been fairly clear? Well, if you have the maps in front of you with the minutes. Okay, yeah, we'll try to be more clear also. And yeah, I hope we have some discussion on this regional planner.
Yeah.
I think it should be really discussed as, you know,
I'll just make a quick comment. This is, as a contractor, the last 3 summers, it has been a challenge not only to get a permit, but also to get the inspections that we need.
sure.
With the addition of Mr. Thorpe in the inspection division, we actually can get an inspection within 2 days. If we call the day before, it happens the second day. With the addition of Mr. Thorpe, it has been very easy for us to actually sit down with either Mr. Corton or Mr. Zent and do a plan review and actually have some time. They are very far behind issuing permits, probably, I'd say, 2 to 3 months, but at least initially, we can take a blueprint in and get those comments. I think as a contractor and as a developer in this town, a part-time position and bringing in that county background is absolutely essential. I don't think we've been commended in different city meetings that I've been at, in Williston and in Bismarck and in Watford, on how Dickinson is stepping up to the plate and safeguarding our community with our development. I think if development continues to grow by Mr. Codon's code enforcement report, it's it's a moot point. It's so needed, and it's so needed to bring in that county discussion that if we decide now, or the city decides now, to start advertising to that position, it's only going to be 4, maybe 5 months out that somebody would fill that position. That's a spring position. That's not a now position. That's a spring position. And if you look at our growth the last 3 years, that's just forcing. So if you look at those things alone, I know the mayor brought up some budget concerns, but it's needed. It's so needed.
It is, it really is. I do agree with that. And I've been waiting for an inspection for 3 months. So I have to go talk to Mr. Zent again today. I know how overloaded the guy is, and the department. It's, you know, and to coordinate, I think the coordination between the city and the county is just, it's essential. It has to happen. And I think we should be appreciative of what the county has done, actually.
Absolutely.
They've come in here and really tried to really partner with Dixon and realize that, hey, we're all in this together. They've been great.
Mr. Chairman, as long as this came up, you know, I heard Ed use the term regional planner, and, you know, probably just semantics here, but to me, it's a county planner. And the county has made some ovations that they want a half-time of a person to be a county planner. There's been a lot of discussion about what the other half should be used for. And I'm hearing you guys say that you think it should be used in the city. And that's what I think. I think, you know, Ed's going to have to give supervision to this new person, which will take some of his time. And I just really think we have to use the other half-time, be it for inspections or code enforcement, whatever it may be. So to me, it's a county planner position, half of it, and the other is the city code enforcement office, I guess.
There's plenty that could be used. It's just time and availability and the rest. One thing that I will let you know that I could let Mr. Tews know as well is that I would like to work with the home builders and try to get a subcommittee and review our building processes and try to figure a way to improve that, you know, with our staff that we currently have. And I have some different ideas, and in order to do so. And so I'm moving forward on that as well, working with the fire department. So we will have a more detailed process, but that process will be able to expedite the permits. We'll formally make the site plan review, which is more of a voluntary committee of the city engineer, myself, sometimes Mel Zent as a building official, and also the fire chief. We're reviewing commercial and industrial plans when they first come in, so that we look at the site itself to see if there's any problems, instead of waiting a month and a half down the road and then finding out they don't have enough parking spaces or the landscaping is insufficient. So we're doing that. I would like to make that more of a formal process in which, before you push any dirt on the property, you submit plans with an expectation that a week later they're reviewed and either they're compliant or not, and then we know, then we can grant an approval for you to push dirt, and we avoid the problems of having a building and either the land use doesn't work or the building's wrong setbacks or parking and the rest. So there's a lot of different things that I'll be working with the building department, try to clean up that process, try to make it, because there's a lot of duplication that can be changed and just streamlined to make it better. Because we've got to work hard, and we're doing that, but we've got to work smarter in order to address the issues. And that's something that I'm going to try to work with in the next 6 months with the Home Builders Association. Maybe Tews, if you want, Mr. Tews, if you want to be on that. I want to get a couple of other people to get perspectives from the contractors and developers, and try to find ways that we can improve the situation. So
That's good. Any other comments, questions, anything you bring before the board? It's time I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.